shooting for bigger things, I guess. Like back home, I'm from just a country town. Like even when I first started punting, everyone's like, why are you going to do that? Like, you got a good job here. Like, you know, it's comfortable, but just going outside your comfort zone and being prepared for that, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and not stressing like, oh, I can't do that because I'm going to be uncomfortable. Like, just do it. Just get through it. Like, it'll be fine.
Put that coffee down.
Creators are leaders. Be careful what kind of leaders you're producing here.
Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman.
They realized that to be in power, you didn't need guns or money or even numbers. You just needed the will to do what the other guy wouldn't.
I'm not leaving. The show goes on.
Well, hello there, friend. Welcome back to the Construction Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Bradley Hartman. And on this show, we bring you ideas and insights from construction leaders across the country every single week to help you lead more effectively. This episode is brought to you by the Simple Sales Pipeline. If you're working with salespeople who are not with consistency and discipline, valuing and organizing their sales pipeline to understand what revenue is going to come in the future, you, my friend, are flying blind. However, you can solve it in under 30 minutes per month for less than $30 per month with the Simple Sales Pipeline. Learn more at thesimpleSalesPipeline.com. So it was October of 2022, and I was thumbing through the Wall Street Journal, and I spotted a headline that caught my attention. It read, "The Rise of the 32-Year-Old College Football Player." Yes, college. That was the title. And I dug into it, and I saw a picture of what appeared to be a punter for Oklahoma State University. Now, while I didn't graduate from Oklahoma State University, they have a little special place in my heart because we have the safety Spanish program as part of their capstone curriculum. So I started reading through the article, and I read about this college football player who was 32 at the time, he's 33 now, named Tom Hutton, who came over from Australia. So I read the article and learned this individual, Tom Hutton, was also studying construction management. He was part of the construction, engineering, and technology program, of which I'm affiliated. So I texted my friend and a department lead there, Dr. Heather Yates, and I said, hey, I just read this article about Tom Hutton. Do you know him? And is he a good guy? And do you think he'd ever be interested in joining the podcast when I come to Stillwater next? She responded in like 30 seconds, and she said, I do know Tom. He's a wonderful human being, and I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to join the podcast, but let me check. Another 60 seconds go by, and she said, yep, he's in. So I was looking forward to this conversation with both Dr. Heather Yates, who is extremely smart and passionate about the construction industry and this next generation of leaders. And she's also a dear friend. And also speaking to Mr. Tom Hutton about his fantastic journey from the construction industry in Australia, coming to Stillwater, Oklahoma, along with his wife, and learning about this whole fascinating story, which I find really inspiring. And as you will hear, there are many facets of it that I think will resonate with you, but it really has me thinking about this recent Bailey Zimmerman song that's titled Religiously, and about these individuals in our life that truly believe in us and help us do some things that we maybe didn't think we were capable of. Now, different than the story, Tom Hutton and his wife, they remain together, but the point remains the same. Having someone in your corner who truly believes in you religiously can really help you do some amazing things and change the direction of your life.
Remember watching you play me our song on guitar, I thought I'd marry you. Act like I'm happier now, but all of my friends know that ain't the truth. And lately life's been good to me. Mama's healthy and I'm helping out the whole family. A lot of people know my name, I made a little change, but that don't mean nothing. Cause now I'm in this cold bright light, and this don't even feel like life. Cause I don't have the only woman who believed in me religiously. And now I'm in the back
So you will meet and learn from Mr. Tom Hutton. What about Dr. Heather Yates? Well, Dr. Heather Yates worked for a national award-winning heavy highway concrete paving company and later worked for Tran Systems, Inc., a national transportation design and inspection firm where she ran the testing and inspection laboratory and served as an inspector on various highway and bridge projects in southeast Kansas. Dr. Heather Yates earned her undergraduate degree in engineering technology at Oklahoma State University. Then she got her master's in engineering technology at Pittsburgh State University. She then earned her educational doctorate at Oklahoma State University in 2012. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Heather Yates and Tom Hutton. As always, thank you for listening. Mr. Tom Hutton, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Dr. Heather Yates, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Yes, it's great to be back here in Stillwater. I'm thrilled you guys made time. You allowed time on your schedule to go to Fuzzies. Now we're here. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things, leadership, coaching, maybe the transfer portal, if we get into that, both athletically and for students in construction programs. But Tom, the part of the story that I was fascinated to hear about was this 10, 11, 12-day period in your life where you chose to go a very different route and things happened extremely quickly. And I was just fascinated because we often know intuitively that, hey, just one decision or 1 week or one day, one decision can totally change the trajectory of your life. And then you have this story, I think, in a very dramatic sort of way. Could maybe you give us a little bit of context of you're working at the paper mill, this opportunity came up with ProKick, and take us through, where you start Googling where the hell is Stillwater, Oklahoma in the United States. So maybe go into that a little bit.
All right. So starting out, we'll go back probably a few days before that 10-day period. So I was working at the paper mill. I'm a qualified carpenter, but the job at the paper mill is good money. It's good conditions, shift work. So you work a few days, you get like almost a week off. And it was sort of a job that I wanted to go into because I thought good money, time off, I'll be happy. That's all I need, good money and time off. But then I really wasn't like fulfilled in what I was doing. And in my time off, I'd have a Monday to Friday off and all my friends are at work. I can't do anything. My wife's at work. I'm just sitting on the couch. So I started thinking about something else I can do. And one night, I think it was a night shift, I started work at 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. and I was just driving around a forklift and I had my headphones in listening to the local radio. And there was a 38-year-old guy from my area who got a scholarship to play for, I think it was Lenore Ryan University.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it is, and then I'd heard about punting a few years before, but I was 28 at this stage. And when I first heard about it, I was 25 and I'm like, no one's going to pick up a 25-year-old punter. And then when I heard he got his scholarship, I was like, well, there's an opportunity there for me. So I started Googling ProKick Australia, which is the program he went through. It's a program that ultimately I went through. That's down in Melbourne, which is about an hour, 15-minute drive from where I am. And then I got the email of the guy who runs it, Nathan Chapman, emailed him. And then actually I emailed him on like a Friday, and then that weekend I went on like a boys trip to Adelaide, and had a big weekend. And then he didn't get back to me until the plane ride home. So it was that post big trip depression, and I was like, I don't want to contact this guy. It was a good idea then, but now I can't be bothered with that. And then a couple of days passed, and I eventually got back to him, thinking nothing would kind of materialize out of it. And then he said, yeah, just come down Wednesday night, 4 p.m. into the city in Melbourne, and we'll let you have a few kicks and we'll see if it's worth doing, like if you've got the potential there. And then if it is worth doing, then we'll look into like your eligibility and stuff. So I went down, had a few kicks, and then he's like, yeah, this is definitely worth doing. Talk to your wife, see if it's actually something you're prepared to commit to. And even then I was kind of taken aback because I was like, I didn't really expect anything to come from this. Like I thought just the story of going down to try out would be a good enough story. And then I'd just go back and say, yeah, I tried. So I went home and spoke to Kelsey, my wife, and she was like, yeah, go for it. And even then I was like, well, now I don't have an excuse. Like I was kind of hoping she'd be like, I don't know about moving overseas. And then so I was still kind of umming and ahhing about whether I was going to do it. And a few days passed by, a few more training sessions down in the city passed by, and then woke up one morning after night shift. I'd been asleep for about an hour in the morning, and then it was ProKick trying to get a hold of me, and they said, you need to answer your phone. We got a guy from Oklahoma State that wants to talk to you. And I said, give me half an hour. I need to Google Oklahoma State because I don't know nothing about it. Right. And then so I Googled it, and I was like, yeah, that looks unbelievable. Had a chat to him. It was just a brief chat, and then nothing official. And then that's kind of when it got real. It happened so fast. And then 3 weeks after that, I think they officially offered me my scholarship.
And what month of the year was this?
That was December was when I had my first session, and then it was early January when I spoke to him on the phone.
And that was 2019?
That was January 2018.
2018. Okay. Yeah. All right. By the way, I was a little intimidated to do this podcast with you because you were on, to my telling, 79 other podcasts. So lots of other shows that you've been on that I had to listen to all of them and make sure we weren't just repeating the same stuff. But I'm joking, of course, but I did have to prepare a little bit more. I'm like, dude, this guy's done a lot of work. I got to make sure I'm not asking the same questions. But you said that I think gets to this idea of kind of self-belief and I think identity, which I think young, old, all of us, we kind of grapple with, some more publicly than others. But you said, I'm not sure if I'm the type of person who does this sort of thing, which is get this opportunity that came out of nowhere, and 2 weeks later, now I'm going to be a punter in the Big 12, which, what the hell's the Big 12? And where's all this happening? And halfway, 10,000 miles across the globe. Do you think if you weren't with Kelsey and you're just a single dude working at the paper mill, living the life, flying to Adelaide on the weekends, killing it, do you think you would have made the move?
No, there's no chance. Even that first session, it was at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon in the city. Kels and I were actually at the beach that day. We had a little cabin down at the beach my parents used to have, and we were there. It was like 110 degrees. We were laying on the beach. I was like, the last thing I want to do right now is drive 2 hours to the city to kick a ball around. Like, nothing's going to come from it. And she actually almost grabbed me by the scruff of the neck, and she was like, you always do this. You always have like ideas that you want to do this and you want to do that, and you have the potential to do this. And everyone back home when I played football was like, you could have been anything, but you can never be bothered doing it, or it's just too hard. She's like, just go down there. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But she's like, I don't want to hear you say, I can't be bothered, or like explain it like you weren't good enough. At least try. So yeah, I wouldn't have even got to that first stage if it wasn't for Kels.
We're going to come back to this. I'm kind of fascinated by this specialization, not only in football, punters, and then even coaches and how we coach and strategize about special teams and everything else, but even this whole Nathan Chapman character and how he starts a specialization 10,000 miles away and has connections with Oklahoma State, I think I'm fascinated with. But before we get to there, I have to ask, and then Dr. Heather Yates, I want you to jump in here as well. How did you end up choosing the construction management or construction engineering and technology? Did I get it right? Yes.
Yeah. Construction engineering technology.
How did you choose this major? I mean, her and I are certainly biased. We have ideas why you did, but just curious, what were your reasons?
So I actually enrolled at Oklahoma State under, I think it was sports and coaching science was my degree. And I had this kind of, I'm going to the other side of the world. I'm changing my whole life. I'm going to do something completely different. And I got about a semester in and I hated it. Like that, it just wasn't me at all. I didn't know anything about it. I had all this experience in construction and like I was kind of mechanically minded, I guess. And I was like, I hate this. I got to go back into construction. And then I started looking at construction management, and I think the degree used to be called construction management.
It did, yeah.
And then it changed name. So that's how I got into it.
Okay, so I guess the interesting part too is that the first time I really knew of Tom, he's in my class, right? And so he's in estimating 1, the most diligent student in the class, on his iPad, working out all the problems, coming up after class, asking me questions about something. And then the conversation starts with, I know someone that knows you. And he pops off my dissertation chair's name of all the things, right, to bring it all around. But it was really interesting because I didn't even know really at first that Tom had changed his major, that he was playing football, that he's in construction. It took a little bit of time to figure it all out, but it was a really nice surprise, I guess, too. And honestly, I think that his experience in construction made him so great of a student because he understood what was going on. His questions were very insightful because he'd been there, done that.
Yeah. Can you give us a little context? So I use the Chat GPT. I know half the world is going crazy. All students are using it to ace their programs. I used it to ask a few questions about not only the home building market in general in Australia, but also the educational opportunities post high school in Australia. And it came up with the VET, the vocational education training maybe. So is that what you did? Was that in high school? Well, our version of high school. Do you guys call it high school there? What do you call it?
High school is just 7 till 12.
Okay.
So we have primary school, which is elementary school, I guess, prep to 6, and then high school 7 to 12.
Okay. So when did you get kind of drawn in and realized you have some kind of natural mechanical ability doing work? Obviously, you did carpentry. How did that work from an educational standpoint?
So I'd always actually wanted to be a carpenter. That was when I was 3 years old. People would say, "What do you want to be?" And I was a football player and a carpenter. So I wouldn't say I had a natural ability for it. I was just really interested in it and used to try and make things when I was a kid. And then none of my parents, my dad doesn't do anything. He couldn't put anything together to save himself. But I guess I just learnt everything. And then I think when I was at high school is when VET actually became a thing.
Okay.
So I would have been one of the first classes to go through it, I guess. And then, so the 1 day a week through year 11 and year 12, or your junior and senior year, you spend a full day at a trade school. So you learn, I think it was just building and construction. I don't think it was specifically carpentry, but yeah, you learn just the very basics of construction and how to put things together, and yeah, mainly residential kind of building and stuff like that. And then obviously from high school, then I went into my carpentry apprenticeship.
You shared a little bit of context about the construction engineering and technology or construction management programs in the university setting here isn't really either an obvious path or something that you need to do in Australia, where it's largely you start working with your hands and you're an electrician or you're a plumber or you're a carpenter, and then you kind of just progress in your career into a management role. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's I feel like over here, college has almost just become something that you do. It's like you finish school, you go to college, it's just a tradition almost. Whereas back home, it's really not. Unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something that requires a degree, most people just go straight into the field, start working, at least work a year or two, and then, you know, their position might then require a degree in a certain field to be able to progress. And then people will go to school, and it's usually part-time university while they're still working full-time. That's what Kelsey did. She was working full-time and did university full-time to become a graphic designer, communications coordinator sort of thing. So yeah, it's not really like straight out of school into college and then into the field. There's a lot more 17, 18-year-olds in the full-time workforce.
So Heather, when you see a student like Tom, and you know, having come on here to campus with you over the last several years, there's always seems to be one or two, and just coming from the outside, you can see they're very engaged. They ask questions. There's a different maturity level that I think just comes with age. Does that change the way that you teach and challenge, or is it, hey, they're already supplying a great role model for the rest of the class in most cases, and you don't really want to necessarily shine more of a spotlight on them to make them feel awkward that they are the, 32-year-old in the capstone class?
Right. So, I mean, we do. It's like, I don't know, 1 or 2 every so many years we'll have a little bit more non-traditional student. And I think a lot of times what I see is, I mean, they don't really need a lot of help in the classroom. They're choosing to be there. It's not like anyone expected them to do it. They're not just moving on because someone said, oh, this is your next step. You're not moving back into the house. You're going to college, and they choose a major that way. No, they're choosing this major purposefully because they want to advance themselves in one particular direction or another. And in the classroom, really, you just kind of let them lead. You let them do their thing, because I think that they spend a lot more time fitting in than the other students spend time fitting in. They have to spend more time building relationships that the other students don't necessarily have to do because they're already different. And so, I mean, you know, they set the curve on the test, and that sets them apart because then somebody's mad because Tom got 100% and, you know, that kind of thing, right? And so a lot of times I just let them do their thing, but just let them blend.
So Tom, maybe bridge that here in any way that you want to, whether it's the classroom setting. The other thing that I was fascinated to hear about is, so you're coming over from Victoria, Newborough, 10,000 miles away. You're coming in, you have a natural expertise here. I don't say natural. You've worked for it. You have this expertise that you're going to, hopefully, at this point, you're really going to help the team in a unique way. You are older, so you're going to have more maturity. That might work for or against you in terms of leadership. You're also a punter, having been a quarterback who longingly looked at the punters and the kickers, you know, work for 15 minutes at the beginning of practice and then just jack around for, you know, the next 2 hours. I'm like, those guys, right? So you have that, but you're also coming into a game. You were obviously excellent, I'm assuming, at Australian rules football, footy, as I've learned. But you don't know American football at all. So there's this whole range of, hey, opportunities for you to lead and set a good example that you're just going to be a natural leader. On the other hand, you're coming with this unique set of deficits. So maybe just talk about the first few weeks, maybe the first few months on the team and how you developed relationships and kind of thought about your own role on leadership on the team.
Yeah, so I guess that when I first came, I knew the basics of American football, but there's so many rules and there's so many things tactically that you've just got to learn when you're in the game. So I just had to be a sponge and kind of see what the best way to do things, listen to the coaches about what they're trying to convey to the team in terms of leadership, because I didn't really know what I should be telling the guys or if I should be even saying anything. Like you said, I'm a punter, so they're out there busting their tail and I'm there on the sidelines watching them like a cheerleader. I'm not going to be the one to come in and tell them to run faster or work harder or anything. And then on top of that, I'm the 30-year-old guy that doesn't have a clue about the game. So you just had to, mainly it was in the locker room and even outside of practice, just building relationships with the guys and earning their trust and then feeling like I was able to speak up when I could see something. And I was really conscious not to be that guy that older guy that they feel like he's almost like a spy for the coaches and, you know, walk in the room and they all stop talking and they all stop laughing and everyone gets serious. So, yeah, I was just really conscious of that. And then the only time I'd really speak up is when, you know, common sense would kick in that people were clearly doing something that was going to affect the team or the culture or the locker room or people were going to get in trouble, which didn't happen very often, to be honest. But, yeah, just over time, understanding what should be done and when it should be done and when people are allowed to jack around and when they should be focused. But I wasn't that much of a vocal leader on the football team over here just because the position doesn't really warrant it. But yeah, when things were there to be said, I'd speak up.
If you come back and you win the Ray Guy Award, you're like, all right, I'll let you speak up once during the season. After that.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you mind sharing the story you just were talking about? Adaptability and the importance of communication, that when things change and things are very dynamic, they change all the time, and how we adjust, that's part of it. But especially on a team when you have 11 or you're on a project and it's 100 or it's a small team that's doing flat work, it's 5 people, whatever. It's the importance of communicating as you're all adapting in the same way, and kind of a vivid experience that you had. Was it against Texas Tech?
It was against Texas.
It was against Texas. Yeah. You mind sharing that story? Yeah.
So we had, I think it might have even been my first punt of the game. Texas was our first Big 12 opponent. So we played 3. I think we played Tulsa, Oregon State, and someone else. And we'd won pretty comfortably in all of those games. So Texas was our first big opponent. And they'd clearly game planned for me because they knew I was a left footer and they knew I liked to run out to the left and punt the ball. So the first punt of the game, we ran out there. We had our plan to run to the left and punt the ball left, and they lined up about 4 guys on the left, just right where I was meant to run, and we had no one to block them. So
wide, like split outside the tackle, just waiting over there.
Yeah. So I think there was 2 extra guys on the left that were completely uncovered.
All right.
So we all kind of looked at each other. We did have a plan in place, and that was literally just to flip the punt to the right. We did the exact same thing, but to the right. So we did that, and then as we did that, Texas obviously knew what we were doing, and those same 2 guys just ran across to the right, and we're in the exact same position. And then we all looked around at each other again, and thought, oh, well, we're stuck with it now.
There's like 6 seconds left on the clock. Yeah. Okay.
The clock's running down. And then the guy who makes the calls just turned and looked at me and kind of shrugged his shoulders and then said, ready, set. And the ball got snapped and I just had to adapt. I knew at that stage we were kind of screwed. So I had to try and get it off as quick as I could and just not get blocked, which it did, luckily. But it was a close one. It was my first big game. I think there was 102,000 people there, and it was not ideal.
So what is the adjustment there? And again, kind of see the construction industry, for better or worse, through a sporting lens. But as you think about that and you think about, I'm sure you guys watch some game film. Were there any lessons or principles there that can apply to our listeners who are saying, well, I have no idea. I can't imagine being in Tom's shoes, literally punting against Texas in front of whatever, 60,000 people or whatever it is. Any principles that you've just learned from football about communicating and adapting on the fly, but also making sure that it's not just you, it's 10 other people who are making that adjustment with you that you're going to be able to carry forward in your career?
Yeah, that's right. I think people can get caught up in leadership communication as being just conveying your message to them and not taking anything back. Whereas a lot of the time in my first year when I really didn't know what was going on with the rules of football, I'd get told what to do and then I'd get out there and I'd be like, wait, like something would be slightly different. So I'd have to go back, communicate that to the coaches, and then they'd usually dumb it right down, strip everything back and say, look, you just have to do this in this situation, or if this happens, you have to do this. But yeah, I think it's really important to take back. Coach Gundy always talks about it's like a cheat sheet. So we come off the sideline, talk to the coaches. The coaches will give you a cheat sheet, what to do when you go back out there, as long as you listen and you're prepared to actually execute on what you've been told. And I think that's true in construction too. Like with that story I just said, it was so important for us to have that backup plan in place, because if we hadn't have made that call, the punt would have been blocked. And the statistics say 92% of the time you get a punt block, you lose the game. So it's an important thing most people don't think about, but it's very important to get the punt off. So having that plan in place and then a backup plan as well, and not being sort of married to your first idea and being able to actually adapt from that. And even obviously we practice our plan A, plan B, plan C, and just having that ready to go and be willing to adapt to it. Because a lot of the time you'll have your plan A and that's your ideal plan. Plan B, a lot of the time it might be time to implement plan B. It might cost you a little bit more. It might take a little bit more time. So you commit yourself to plan A, even though in your own heart you know it's probably not going to work. And then it just ends up being more messy than it should have been.
As Tom's kind of sharing that, and also before we turn the mics on, he was just talking about how the coaches out of necessity had to do a good job of really simplifying it. You're going to take the snap, you're going to run here, and then you kick it, please. Like, how do we keep it simple? I feel construction and leadership in general, often we make things a lot more complex. And we make some assumptions about what people know, and we all share the same beliefs. So obviously I can use a little bit of jargon. As you think about teaching, whether it's this capstone course that are going to be out in the world here in a few months, Heather, or maybe it's students that are in kind of the soft skills course that are going through How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie book. What have you learned about keeping things real simple? Because sometimes the biggest messes we find ourselves in are interpersonal ones where in theory this should be simple, but it's not. It's anything but simple and got complicated in a hurry. And sometimes the root cause of it is just you saying something and us both looking at or hearing the same thing, but understanding it's really different. How does that play into kind of how you teach leadership to these students that are in the classroom before they kind of have full-time jobs on site?
So one thing we work on is text messages and emails. Read them angry, because everybody reads your text message and your email angry. If you read it in angry voice and it's not angry, I mean, how many times people get bent out of shape about a text message or an email because it's taken out of context? Because we're taught in construction to keep it simple, keep it short, keep it concise, no extras, right? We teach that. But when you take out all the extras, you take out the niceties, you take out the kindness a lot of times. And you don't mean to be unkind. You're just trying to be direct. You're just trying to get the job done. And so, just talking about, trying to add a few niceties, but not too many, right? Because that wastes time. And we don't have time for that. We have to keep moving. But just trying to convey, getting the message across, but being kind about it, because kindness goes a long ways. And you do have to keep it really simple. But when you strip things down, it becomes more direct, right? And so that's what I think, one thing that we really work on.
That was something that I was sure to mention to the people, my supervisors and stuff in my internship, because I came in there with all this experience, or so they thought, and kind of thought they could talk to me in all this jargon. But for one, I haven't worked in a management kind of role, and two, I haven't worked in America. So you call things different things. There's feet and inches. There's all these different things. So I said to him, just treat me like I don't know anything. Tell me, and then I'll tell you what I know. Like I'll tell you, how far you can go with it, just so we don't, you don't want to mess up the foundation, and then they're telling me all this stuff above that, and it all just collapses because they haven't told me one simple thing at the start.
That's really interesting, because I think there is a unique risk that I personally have been involved in. And when you have someone who has some experience and you're like, oh, thank God, if you were coming in right off the street, we'd have to start at square one and it's going to take forever. Great. You know what to do. Hey, just go over here. And you are getting 10% of the communication that they would normally give somebody else. And obviously loaded in there is a whole bunch of assumptions. But I think that happens a lot when you got 8 years experience, 15 years experience. So, hey, you work for company A, we're a competitor of company B. You know how this works, right? And we expect you just to jump in right away. And that can be dangerous, but it's also, not easy in an industry where you really got to be disciplined and efficient to be under budget and be on schedule, So it's not like we can take all the time in the world to make sure Tom, who's been a carpenter, you've been out in the field, and you have this unique set of skills of swinging a hammer and then also having the management side, you can jump right in and help immediately. Well, maybe. Maybe. Not really.
Yeah. I've done management in the classroom, but I haven't actually done it in the field. So that's a completely different set of skills. And like you said, your 15 years of experience and my 15 years of experience, even if they're the same job or the same kind of role, it's going to be a completely different set of skills. And you might have taken in more in one topic and I'll take in more on another, but it doesn't mean that everyone, just 15 years of experience is like a universal thing.
Yeah. Today we talked about kind of this idea of cultural intelligence and understanding from people from different places, whether it's New York or Chicago or Dallas or LA or Australia. There are sets of assumptions and ways that we do things that are culturally based. Under leadership or management or coaching or communication, is there anything that you've learned over the last 4.5, 5 years or so here that you would either say, we'll say on one of two ends, one being like, when I go back home, I'm going to have to kind of lose this character trait I've picked up. I can't talk to people this way, or vice versa, where, hey, you do it different here. Maybe it's a little nuanced, but it's different, and this will be a real big asset to you. Anything come to mind just in terms of interpersonal or leadership and communication when you return home here in a few months?
Definitely the first thing I'm going to let go of is the feet and inches. It's, I feel like,
that's going to be a problem.
When you're watching a movie, like a horror movie, and the bad guy's right behind the girl, and you're like, he's behind you. That's like me looking at a set of plans like, just put it in millimeters. It's going to be so much easier. Like, what are you doing? Why are we doing this so hard?
We're holding out. No metric system for us. It makes sense for everybody else except us.
I feel like I've got the answer that no one else knows. And I was just like, just change it. But one of the things, and I think it's probably been involved, the football departments definitely help with that, being just the things you're exposed to and the people you get exposed to and the conversations like this. It's just kind of shooting for bigger things, I guess. Like back home, I'm from just a country town. Like even when I first started punting, everyone's like, why are you going to do that? Like, you got a good job here. Like, it's comfortable, but just going outside your comfort zone and being prepared for that, being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and not stressing like, oh, I can't do that because I'm going to be uncomfortable. Like, just do it. Just get through it. Like, it'll be fine. And being over here throughout COVID as well, just the resilience and being able to, there's things that I got through that I would never get through back home just because I didn't have to. But over here, being away from family and friends for over 3 years, it's like I had no other choice. So I didn't do a good thing by doing it. Like, I didn't do it on purpose, but it still builds resilience and just character and just life experiences that I've had over here.
Can you go into a little bit about when you get home here in a couple months? We will make sure by the time this comes out, I realize it's not 100%, but it sounds very likely. Walk me through maybe just a little bit of construction, if you're going to be doing municipal work. You said you're going to be working for the Shire, which made me think of Lord of Rings. So tell me just a little bit about what you're going to be doing, how you're going to be applying your construction engineering and technology degree from Oklahoma State back home. And will you be, when you go back home, will you be living in Newborough?
Yeah, we've still got our house in Newborough, so we'll be moving straight back into that, which is weird. Not many people move out of their house and move back into it, but we're going to be doing that.
Yes, well, as you were kind of sharing just the value of real estate, both in Australia and the United States over the last several years, has turned out to be you're moving back into something that's valued more. Yeah. That's exciting. But maybe tell me just a little bit about the role you're going to be getting back into, including kind of the difference in jargon and kind of whether it's a shire or a county and what you're going to be doing and what you're excited about.
Yeah, so it's for the Shire, which it covers an area of, I don't know what it is in miles, but kilometres, it's probably about 100 square kilometres, I guess, or I actually don't know how big that is.
I don't know what a kilometre is, and then you want me to square it. I have no idea what we're talking about.
From Stillwater to Oklahoma City, and about that kind of area. So we call them shires. I guess you guys call them counties over here. A little bit bigger. Shires are a little bit bigger back home. So any schools, like recreation centres, basketball stadiums and pools and things like that get built in the Shire are built by the Shire. So I'll be hopefully a project manager on those kind of jobs. It's called major projects. So I didn't really want to get into roads and things like that. It doesn't interest me. So that's kind of split in two different things, like the major projects and the roads and that side of things. So hopefully I'll be doing that sort of thing.
You know, as you transition back to Australia and thinking of like the coursework that you took at OSU, what do you think is going to impact your job? What do you think? I mean, I made you estimate in feet and inches.
Obviously, estimating one and
capstone can change your life.
Yes. I'm actually using estimating one right now in that masonry takeoff job that I'm doing. But to be honest, I think the internships, like the classwork that we do, prepares us for the internships. But I feel like the internships really, for me anyway, I learn a lot better when I do things. So classes like estimating, where we're actually physically got to do things, that I learn a lot more from that. And then the internships, where it's not just like you write down an answer and if you get it wrong, you get a bad grade. Like if you get the wrong answer or you mess something up in the real world, it's not that easy to fix. So just putting that pressure and expectation on yourself and then applying just bits and pieces from the coursework, I think it'll take me a long way.
So I'll tee this up for both of you here. This idea of the transfer portal, and I realize as I'm sitting here in Stillwater, Oklahoma, like 100 yards from the football stadium, it might be a tender subject as it stands right now. But I've heard this topic coming up in construction as well, where, for the idea of the transfer portal is that, hey, if I come in and get a full ride to Oklahoma State, I'm here, it doesn't go well for one season, I'm out, and I'm going to go find someplace else. And you have these guys who are 3 years, 3 different schools. We're also seeing that in the construction industry where if folks aren't feeling like they're getting traction and they're really enjoying it, they're bouncing around from some local companies and they're working for 3 or 4 different companies in 3 or 4 years. Is that pervasive? Is that a thing from both of your perspectives? And is it such a bad thing?
I can't really speak on the construction industry. I haven't really been in it to see that at the moment. One thing I think people get caught up in, and it gets sold to everyone a little bit too much, is that idea of you should love what you do. People think that means from 9 to 5, you love every minute of it. Just, you can love your job and have bad days in the middle of it or bad weeks or whatever. So I think people can get caught up in having a bad day or a bad week or a bad interaction with your boss or this or that. But you need to take a step back and look at what you're actually doing, why you got into it. Does that fulfill like your purpose and what you want to do? If it does, well, then you got to find ways around that and find ways to improve that. And if it doesn't, we'll then move on. But yeah, people are a little bit too quick to jump the gun and just move on because they've had a couple of bad days or a bad week or a bad project. But yeah, the good jobs aren't that easy to come by.
Yeah, so I think that just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I think that this kind of mindset as far as hopping ship quick or moving around quick. I think some of it is this instant gratification that we get to see on social media. And, the social media picture is like everything is always sunny, right? People only show the good stuff, or I would say 90% of what people see is just the good stuff. And I mean, like Tom said, everyone has bad days. Everyone's job sucks some days. It doesn't matter. But this instant gratification thing, people don't see a lot of rewards sometimes with the sticking it through and carrying it out. To be at a job 16 years, I've been at this job 16 years, like that's unheard of, right? Who does that? What, don't you have bigger and better things you want to do with your life? People ask questions like that. But at the same time, there's a loyalty and things like that. And I don't think that that's something that you see as much anymore, is this extreme loyalty to a job, to a school, to a university, to an athletic program, whatever, because we've made it really easy to move. Really, really easy. Changing construction faculty jobs is a little bit harder. I have to physically move, right? I guess you would even in football, but it's not like all bills paid if I move, right? It's a big deal. And so I do think that the easier we make it, and right now in construction, it's really easy. Everybody needs people. It's easy to move. So the easier something is, the more likely people are going to do. It's low-hanging fruit at that point in time. And so I do think that, we're embarking on this piece of the industry of college sports that maybe is a little dangerous and touchy and is not extremely loyal to anything. It's loyal to the human being. It's not loyal to another entity.
Riding for the brand.
The other thing with college football is I'm sure they'll put some restraints on it, but at this stage, like you look at the NFL and most other leagues around the world, there's a salary cap. But at this stage, as far as I know, I don't think there's a salary cap on college. So, if Elon Musk all of a sudden decides he likes Oklahoma State football, he's going to say, well, Tesla will sponsor the best quarterback coming out of college and the best running back and the best this and that, and they can all come here and earn millions of dollars. Well, obviously Elon Musk doesn't sponsor OSU, but there's
T. Boone Pickens comes to mind. He missed the NIL period just by a decade,
But as far as I know, that's going untapped at the moment. So it's kind of going to make the rich richer and the poor poorer at this stage until they kind of restrict it a little bit. So I think it needs a lot of tweaking.
Yeah, the other thing, just anecdotally, I don't see a lot of is the stories about the top 5 quarterback in the country goes to school A, struggles there, leaves, goes to school B, actually struggles there too, and then he bounces. He's gone now to multiple schools. What I read a lot of is the success stories, and I think there's a survivor or victor bias in what we're writing about. What's his name? Who's Superman? Who went from, I know Norman, sorry to bring that up, but who went to USC. Like they just packed up, brought all the best guys. Yeah, thank you, Caleb Williams. They roll in. Now, granted, he went with the same coach, so maybe it's not a great example, but you're highlighting these stories where I was here, 6 weeks later, I'm here, and I just got a touchdown, and I know all the plays, and life's perfect. I still think that's a really small fraction because there's always switching costs that go into that.
Well, even Quinn Ewers, who plays at Texas now, I think he got offered to play. There's some rule in Texas that
Ohio State
high school student or people under a certain age couldn't make money. So he went to Ohio State to make millions for 1 year and then transferred back to Texas. It's just like, where's the loyalty in that? And why would Ohio State do that knowing full well that that's probably going to happen?
Yeah. All right. I'm watching time. I have one. Well, they're both very serious questions. I want very serious answers. But Tom, I want to ask you, as you think about books or movies or anything that has been influential in kind of your career development or your developing some leadership principles in terms of kind of media, whether it's a book or a movie or maybe a podcast you listen to, does anything come to mind that you would recommend to our audience that, well, maybe they have read it or watched it or listened to it that could serve as a reinforcement, or maybe something new that they have not?
So I'm actually really big on books like this. Like I've read a few of the good ones I read was Think Again. I think it's by Adam Grant. It's about rethinking things. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's one I'm reading at the moment called Glue. It's more about becoming a good project manager. And then I listen to podcasts a lot, but mainly on just mindset, positive mindset. I got right into, there's an Australian guy called Hugh Van Cuylenberg, and he started a thing called the Resilience Project, which is, he talks about sort of the chemistry in your brain is wired to see a negative 7 times more likely than you're going to see a positive. That's because of the way we evolved, and that you kind of meant to see the dangers and stuff like that. But you can actually do things to flip the chemistry in your brain so that you see positives more often than negatives. And just things like that. I think just having a positive mindset and seeing things as opportunities instead of problems, and always looking for solutions to things. Yeah, I'm fascinated by books and all those sort of things.
Awesome. I'm glad I asked. You gave us several good ones. Heather, anything to add on that? Books, podcasts, and maybe it's something recent that you've read that you'd recommend to a friend, or maybe something classic. We did touch, so in the capstone, I love that because it's a story about a construction company, but I always call it the Humble, Hungry, Smart book. It's The Ideal Team Player, right? By Lencioni. And then in your soft skills class, you got him reading Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great. Anything else you'd recommend?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that one of the books that really has made an impact on kind of how I try to do my daily tasks is Atomic Habits. So I really like Atomic Habits. I do a lot of habit stacking. And so I really focus on, something as simple as I always drink 16 ounces of water when I drive to the gym every day. It just gives me 16 ounces more water that I wouldn't have focused on. But just, simple stuff, right? But I always stack habits. And then I really do like the 7 Regrets of the Dying. I actually think I pulled that possibly off of what you were reading one time. You did a snap or a Instagram post of it. But just thinking about, you get one life. You get one life. And Tom's a testament of taking chances, right? And seeing what happens. But, just thinking what did people regret? What did you regret? And trying to live life without a bunch of regrets, right? How to put yourself out there, how to try to advance, how to think differently, think positively. And so it kind of depends on who you are and where you are in life, which one of those 2 that I might go to. But those are kind of 2 that I go to that are maybe beyond what you guys said.
Yes, that's great. Well, I use the Clear Habit Journal, and we are recording this beginning of March. So I just got have you ever heard of that? The Clear Habit Journal. So it's basically James Clear takes the Atomic Habits, and then it's kind of like 1 line per day, and then some writing prompts. I've just found something that's somewhat slowed time down, especially with the kids and all the personal stuff we're doing, and is just 1 line per day. I just kind of write who I met with. So today I will write, yesterday I was preparing for an interview with Tom, going to see Heather. So today I'll just kind of write this down. And what happens is I just feel give me 10 days in the future. And I'm like, what the hell happened in the 1st of March? I have no idea. I completely forget. But then if I can just look at that and write off, and I'll just see it, the people, I feel just something that it's okay, things slow down a little bit. But I would strongly recommend the Clear Habit Journal, and it's $20. But
I have the Resilience Project Make a Journal as well, which is what I have, and it's just a few things. It'll say, what are you looking forward to tomorrow, or what went well for you today, and things like that. And I noticed throughout my internship, actually, I wasn't able to work out with the team because I had to work. The last day of my internship, I could work out with the boys the next day, 6:00 in the morning. So I was looking forward to working out with everyone again. I woke up in the morning and moped into the stadium and grabbed my clothes and stuff like I normally do. It's almost like a habit just to be somber as you walk in there. And then I remembered that I wrote in my journal that I'm actually looking forward to this. And I was like, oh, why am I moping around? I want to do this. And it just kind of flicks your mentality. It's really important for me.
Love that. Well, I'm glad I asked. One last question. It's an odd question. I did not give you a heads up on it. I'm a little bit fascinated with Tasmania. Is this the thing? Do people from Victoria and Melbourne, do you go to Tasmania? Have you been to Tasmania?
So I've never been to Tasmania, but my dad was born in Tasmania. You know what it is, the little island off the bottom of Australia?
Yes, Tom. Yeah. I've done way too much research.
It's kind of seen as, You know the way people talk about people from Alabama over here. It's kind of that's what.
There was a joke in my
Tasmania's
presentation today. As a matter of fact.
Yeah, like
we love everybody. For sure.
People from Tasmania have two heads and all this stuff. So, but they're a little bit like, I don't know if there's a state here that's like, it's almost like you go there and they're 20 years behind the times.
Well, so that is why. So I was reading this book a while back, The Rational Optimist by Matt Ridley. Strongly recommended to a friend. Kind of, it's a little bit heavy on the anthropology. However, so Tasmania, I guess, geographically used to be, tens of thousands of years ago, was connected to Australia. And it drifted apart. And there's a story about over successive generations and thousands of years, there's such a small population there that they like regressed in terms of skills. And the idea was that if you don't have a large enough population that can specialize in axe throwing or axe making, probably better, over generations, if you have our chief axe maker drowned when he was 29, did we pass along those skills? Anyway, I nerded out on this thing. I went deep on Tasmania, and then we were talking, I was like, when I go to Australia, and I will someday, I want to go to Tasmania. I'm like, is this even a thing people do? So you've never been there.
Well, I say those things about them being 20 years behind the times. I've never been there. That's just that's what I've heard.
Sure.
But I've been to Adelaide, and that's the same.
We've just offended millions of listeners in Alabama and Tasmania at the same time. So great. So do you take it by boat? Do you fly there?
You can do both. It's called the Spirit of Tasmania. It goes from Melbourne. That
makes sense.
A big, like, it's almost like a cruise ship thing.
Okay.
You just drive your car on there and it takes you to Tasmania, so you can have your car while you're in Tassie.
How long does it take to get there?
Flying, it would be from Melbourne. It would only be, I'd assume, an hour.
Oh, you're just up and down.
Yeah.
And then by boat, a couple hours?
That's just a guess too. It could be 3 hours for all I know.
Okay.
But by boat, it would be, I don't know.
I can see you're really close to your father's homeland.
I can't wait to get there.
High on the to-do list when you get home. But well, hey man, I think your story, at least for me, and I was talking to my kids about it, is just, I think, one of being open to possibilities. And I think you shined a light on sometimes the things that we know we're good at, or maybe even great at, sometimes represent fear, because it could be a hard left turn out of Newborough and you end up in Stillwater. But I think that's what's exciting, and just the limitless possibility, and that major things can happen really quickly. And I know you've inspired a ton of people. I appreciate you making time for this and wish you nothing but the best. I will tell you when I go to Australia, I'm going to look you up. So
yeah, I'll come see you in Tassie.
Yeah. we may or may not talk about going to Tassie. But Heather, as well, thank you. Love being kind of part of the program and coming up here and playing a small part here from time to time. So thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming up too.
Thanks for having us.
All right, friends, hopefully you enjoyed that conversation with Dr. Heather Yates and Mr. Tom Hutton, who is back in the great, it's a continent is what it is, the great continent of Australia. Next time I go there, which will be the first time I go there, I will absolutely look this guy up and I will expect a tour of some sort, but he was a gracious host and I really enjoyed talking to him. Just a great guy. Bonus, I also got to use ChatGPT to learn about the construction industry and construction education industry in Australia, which is also interesting. If you did enjoy this conversation, please rate and review on whatever podcast player you're listening to. Those mean more to us than you know. Now, this episode was brought to you by our friends at Paradigm Estimate. Spend less time on tedious takeoffs and more time on what counts. Grow in your business, man. Check out Paradigm Estimate at myparadigm.com/Bradley. Also, check out the Simple Sales Pipeline. In under 30 minutes per month per sales rep, for under $30 per month, you can organize and value your pipeline so you know what revenue's coming in. And that's why most businesses fail. Lack of cash flow. Solve that problem. Figure it out. Visit the Simple Sales Pipeline for more info. That's all I've got. I'm done here. We're going to close out with our leadership mantra. You, my friend, are owed nothing. Deliver value first. Make it a great week.